Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Mic is on. Okay, let's go ahead and call this subcommittee meeting of the Regulatory Policy Committee meeting to order. We do have a quorum with myself and Ms. Langley present. So we'll go ahead and move on right away to the meeting agenda.
Yeah.
Item number 1.
So Dr. Benitez, we do have 7 items on the agenda, actually 6, and we are going to try and stay within an hour time frame. Staff was told what the allotted time was for each one of the items. And I'm not going to have a buzzard on them or anything, but they're kind of.
Yeah. I have a gavel.
Oh, yes, you do. So, and with that, we'll start with the first 2 items. Dr. Anita Guerra will be, her and her staff will be presenting those 2 items.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Christy Baker is going to be doing this presentation.
Get the microphone a little bit closer to you. Thank you.
Sorry, Christy Baker will be doing this presentation.
Okay.
This one. It's not there, Christy.
No, it's there. That one. You like me to do it? There we go. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Christy Baker. Can you hear me okay?
You
little
can-
bit.
Yeah, we can raise that microphone up a little bit higher. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, touch. Yeah.
How about now?
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So moving into agenda item number 1. Discussion and presentation of revision to Brownsville Public Utility Board's policy, personnel policies and procedures, number 8, sick leave policy. So we do have proposed changes to the sick leave policy number 8. These will include general changes, inclusions to the policy that weren't there previously, and removal of language from the policy. So the general changes include the updated format to the policy that is to the board approved standard. We also wrote the policy so that it is more, so that it's easier for our employees to understand when they read it. We have proposed a change of increments of use from 1 hour to 30 minutes. And then we did add language to change if somebody exhausts their sick leave, they will be required to use their vacation leave. New inclusions to the policy.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What is the policy right now if they exhaust their sick leave?
My understanding is that right now they don't have to use their vacation leave, so that's the change is that we're actually going to do that.
But is it tracked or are they penalized? I mean, financially, I mean, or do they just take it off and?
It depends on the
Right now it's to change it, right? To require
Yes.
to vacation use? What is the current policy?
So they're not required to use their annual leave, so they can choose to go on leave without pay.
Leave without pay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
All right, we've made new inclusions to the policy. The first one with regards to acceptable use, we've expanded that. Employees would now be able to use their sick leave for bereavement. In addition, if there is a school closure or the place of care for a child is closed due to a health emergency or closed by a public official, they would be able to use their sick leave to care for their child on the days that it is closed. If an employee or their family member experiences domestic assault, sexual assault, or stalking issues, they would be allowed to use their sick time in order to address those issues to make them or their family members safe. And then if an employee is going through the adoption process and they are not eligible for FMLA, they would be allowed to use sick leave for the adoption proceedings. Additional language inclusions includes extension or extended language for family member, child, and parent. And we've done this to be more inclusive of the family members that employees tend to care for. And then additional language was added to address the misuse or attempted misuse of the sick leave policy. With regards to the language removal, employees actually accrue their leave while they are on probation. So we have removed the probationary status language. We have employees who work shift work that does not necessarily equate to a 40-hour work week. So we have removed reference to a 40-hour work week from the policy. The leave balances are actually tied to the employee throughout their time with BPUB and not tied to the department they belong to at the time. So we did remove language regarding the transfers of leave to departments. And then regarding, let me back up a minute. We did remove some of the procedure language that was actually in the policy because it belongs elsewhere in a policy or in the procedure.
Okay.
And then the felonious acts, the use or the holiday pay and rehire eligibility are actually addressed in other policies or will be addressed in other policies. So they were removed from the sick leave policy. That does conclude the major modifications to the sick leave
When
policy.
you say will be in other policies, is that going to be sometime soon, or we're going to have a gap?
We actually have all of our policies under review, and I think one of the items are going to be addressing the rest of the policies. I do want to add that one of the things that I tasked HR to do at this time was to look at other state and federal policies to find out what they had in there, and that's how some of the language that was changed and to include it into ours and was added to include the policy for bereavement or other things that are like adoption of a child and that sort of thing to be more consistent to what the industries or various other industries are using for sick leave policy.
Sounds good. Sandra, any questions?
No.
All right. Anything
Okay.
else? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move into agenda item number 2, if that's okay. So this is the discussion and presentation on updating the Brownsville Public Utility Board personnel policies and procedures to approve policy format and standards. So this is regarding the entire BPUB policies and procedures manual. We did update the formatting only to the approved board standards. We did not make revisions to the policies themselves. Again, it was just the format changing. There was no change in the content. This will address an audit issue that was brought up in which our policies and procedures did not meet the board approved standard. Again, any revisions that may be made to a policy will be brought forth to the board. What questions do you have?
No questions on that item.
Okay, that.
Mm.
All right,
Good.
that's
Thank
it.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. I'll take care of
I'll
1
close
and
it.
2, correct?
So now we have item number 3. And we have Ms. Lozano. She's going to be presenting the discussion of possible recommendations and review of the policy on naming Brownsville Public Utilities Board buildings or other physical assets.
Good afternoon, Chair, member of the board. Nancy Tello will be doing the presentation.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Nancy Tello. I'm the Records Information and Policies Manager, and I am presenting proposed revisions to the policy on naming buildings or other physical assets. Just a bit of background, the original policy was approved by the board on April 11th, 2011, and it hasn't been revised since then. So now in 2023, we are proposing some revisions. And also, the purpose of the policy is to establish procedures and criteria for naming buildings or other physical assets to honor our distinguished employees who have retired from BPUB, or to memorialize distinguished deceased employees in recognition of their meritorious and outstanding service to BPUB. Now, the proposed revisions to the document is the policy name. The old policy or the current policy name is Policy of the Brownsville Public Utilities Board on naming of buildings or other physical assets. Therefore, the words of the Brownsville Public Utilities Board has been removed, and we're proposing to name the policy as Policy on Naming Buildings or Other Physical Assets. Another proposed revision is the inclusion of section headings that indicate role and responsibility for the Brownsville PUB General Manager and CEO. In the current policy, it is referred to the chairman of the board of directors, and that has been replaced with BPUB General Manager and CEO. The other proposed revision is the inclusion also of a section heading as role and responsibility of BPUB committee. Under this section, the chief administrative officer has been added as part of the committee, as a member of the committee. And the section also used to reference to the human resources manager. The title has been updated to Director of Human Resources. And also the word, the language of chairman has been updated to chairperson. The document has been converted into BPUB's policy format standards. And these are the revisions to the policy. Everything else from the old policy to the new policy remained the same. Now, the next steps is to take the policy revisions for consideration and approval of the BPUB board on June 12, 2023. Attached to the presentation, you will find a copy of the proposed revisions to the policy and also a copy of the current policy. Are there any recommendations that you would like me to incorporate into the policy?
Sandra? You good?
Okay.
Yep, I think that covers it.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
So members of the committee, you have a chance to also another bite at the review when we bring it to the board for updates and recommendations. Is there just anything that we wanted to get feedback or changes? But with that, you'll probably see them on the June packet.
My packet for item 4 was empty. Is that
Oh, okay.
intentional or is it something you have to add?
On which one? Number 4? Number 4 was supposed to be on board effects and they should have provided them on there, and is the presentation that's mine.
Okay.
Oh,
Those are board effects.
Thank you. So Dr. Benaly, this one, chair on this one in particular, and the intent in this one is the discussion of commercial recommendations for the review of the resolution on the rules governing the board of directors. This is one of the ones that has been in the books for a while, and we're just doing cleanup to ensure that we're doing administrative things. He's not here right now, but he recommended that the rest of the board make any changes. And one of the things that we discussed was we wanted feedback from y'all, and it has to do with the board meeting times. If you recall, we previously met at 5:30, and then upon recommendation, we made another resolution. We went back to 5 o'clock. Upon review with the city to be more inconsistent with the city of Brownsville, they're meeting at 5:30. And so right now we have a committee recommendation actions if, you know, to leave it at 5:30 or to propose back to the 5 o'clock as to be, I'm sorry. I think I made a mistake, you know, it was the other way around.
I had it.
Yeah. No, the city commission is meeting at 5 o'clock and this is an error on right here.
So the city commission meets at 5 or 5?
Yeah, 5.
5, okay, thank you.
We're meeting at 5:30. My mistake, my apologies.
Well, and I'm trying to think, we've always met at
At-
5:30. No,
5 o'clock.
5:30.
5:30.
Well, we started meeting at 5:30 due to comments from the public
Right.
that they wanted us to have them at 5:30.
Yes, that's when we had the spate of public comments
Right.
last fall. That was one of the, and then we decided to push back to 5:30.
So,
So, I mean, personally, I like the idea. I know it's, but of course, we've gone down to very few public comments.
right.
I mean, another way to fix that might be to allow public comments
Later.
later in the meeting at 5:30 if we want to meet at 5. That's one possibility that I'm sure people have thought of, and that I thought of. But I'm honestly, I know it makes for long nights for staff and for board members, but giving the public that opportunity. I would just want, personally, I would just want the public to have an opportunity to get out of their job and get to here at a reasonable time and still be able to comment. And if they're just missing preliminary stuff, because we also moved the closed session, right?
Yes, and that's another that we're moving around.
And so when we move the closed session to the executive session to the end of the meeting, they may miss some items in that first half hour either way, but that's usually administrative stuff that they can review and not an action item of any kind. So is that a possibility where we have
We can get to
public
later.
comments after
At a
a
later.
little later time, but yet still have the meeting open? Yeah.
So let's go to this section right here. This is important for us. So right now, the way the current Rule 8 reads is that the recess to closed session and, then part of the issue was that a lot of people were the closed session went in and then start. So this is the current language in there. Moving it to this, and then now you have close at the end is an alignment to what it works. And so if you look at where the public comments is, we can move around D and E where we can have workshop and public hearings before the public comments. And by the time the public comments happen, then it gives a little bit more time. So then you have the various other things that need to do that. So this is something that we were proposing, and this is something for that we can work around to address some of the issue. We can start the meeting at 5, and then at that point, either you have several things that are on the agenda. There are some general comments that may happen, and then public comments we can move.
How often do we have workshops or public hearings for meetings?
We don't have them very often, as you're aware,
Yeah.
though we do have them. We do have public hearings as meetings.
We buy them a lot of time, right?
We have a lot of
Would
time.
it be possible to insert, I'm just asking, would it be possible to insert public comments after, there's usually some sort of a break in the modality after the general manager's report and individual consideration, but I don't know. I'm just trying to make everybody happy. What do you think? I don't want to belabor this too much because
Yeah.
it's a fine.
No, I agree.
Probably something we discuss with the board, but
I agree, but having them come in, I mean, right after, like you said, I think that would be fine. They're not gonna miss out on too much.
I mean, the manager's report or the staff reports, the presentations of the board are generally stuff that, and they usually leave right afterwards. They could come in and sit for that. Of course, they may have to wait a little bit once we get to that point, but can't make it perfect. I don't know. Would it be possible, let me ask you straight out, would it be possible to insert it after your report?
We could, that's another thing, we have like consent items and it's right
Issue
after,
Against that? Okay.
and then we open it.
Why don't we see what the rest of the board says to that? And moving up to 5, with the second option being, I don't necessarily like the one where we inserted after E because that doesn't really buy them much time. Workshop or public hearings, because we don't normally have that.
Right.
Often enough, to justify a change in the order. So that would be one option. The other option would be just to keep having our meetings at 5:30. So that we have the time to, we give people time to move from work to here.
So moving the public comments to the general manager report.
Fine, and I think, Marilyn, too, I don't think that we only had these public comments coming up last fall, when everything
Right.
happened.
But it's gonna happen again. I mean, don't.
Yeah, so, no,
Uh,
I mean, we don't want it to
That's
happen.
speculating to happen again, but there's going to be a spate of public comments again on another issue. And I think they have the public's comment was right. I think it resonated well with the rest of the board. And I know it resonated well with the chair because he's the one that changed it right away, I believe. Or no, it was Sandra Stein.
Stein.
Yeah.
Okay, these go up 24 hours or 48 hours before?
72.
72, yeah.
72 hours. Okay, so, it's once a month that this happens. So even if you keep it at 5 o'clock, I mean, they have 72 hours to come in and say what they want to say. I mean, I
think it's
Instead
an
of
item
going
that
back and forth
resonates.
with the 5 and
I think
5:30.
it's an item that resonates politically with folks that have hard and fast 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or jobs. And I mean, I would like to see it to where if there's something, I want to make it as open as possible for public comments. I don't want it to be restrictive. So I think we have those two options and the board can decide. Obviously, the third option would be to go back to 5 o'clock as is here, and that limits the time for public comment or for people that are
Right.
traveling. But there could also be a situation where we have changed the wording to where if a member of the public who wishes to make a comment, but they include in that comment that they're not going to be able to make it until a certain time, that we could accommodate that on an individual basis. I have no problem with that either. I don't think it's going to happen often, but if there is an informed citizen who wishes to present their 3 minutes
Then-
later,
Then let's just go ahead and after her report, we can do,
yeah,
we
I
can,
think those are, options that
we can do that.
I'd like the broader, this is an important issue because it's going to affect meeting operations moving forward. You and I may not be here.
Right.
For those meetings, after this, so,
30,
I would hate to
29
make that
days.
decision and then skedaddle. So let's go ahead and have those two,
Mhm.
well, three of them.
yeah.
Okay,
Back to
And-
5, no change to the board order of business. Moving the meeting to 5:30 permanently, or at least until further change, with no change to the board order of business. Or meeting at 5 o'clock with a change to the board order of business, inserting public comments after item G2 in this list.
okay. And this will be the proposed rules on this one, the order that we have are here for closed remains at the end, and then we still have the consideration of future action items and everything else is on here.
Yeah.
Staff reporting would be an individual consideration. Okay, so we'll do. That's a easy, quick fix, and those 3 proposed changes will include. So now I'm going back to other issues that were brought up. And let's talk about closed meetings. And right now, Ms. Langley, you're actually the secretary treasurer on, according to the, to the resolution is that the secretary treasurer shall record, seal, and file minutes of the closed meetings, noting the time and meeting commenced, persons present, and this is conducted at the time of the meeting ended. As we all know, those are being done right now by legal. And so we are trying to address cleanup of what is happening in practice. So any comments to adding or other board designated individual? This gives us the flexibility that if legal's not available, one of the staff members can jump in, or we're back to the secretary treasurer.
Legal is fine with this change?
Yes, this has been with the special counsel, Mr. Cody Polk has reviewed, and he's the one who recommended right now the board designate. You actually should have a copy of the redlining versions and comments in your packet of all the various different things we're working on.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
I'm good.
Good.
Okay. So this one right here, depending on doing that, then we'll do that. We'll, the board will delegate duties of the recording minutes, and we accept, now accept the minutes in closed session because now the closed session is going to be something that's delegated to another person. So we'll make revisions based on the board designee in this section 7 as well. So that's going to be eliminated, the accept minutes of closed session. We talked about 8, and now we're back onto the standing committee. So we're adding this language here. Business of all committees of the board shall only be conducted at the duly posted meeting in which the quorum of the members of the committee of the board are present. Quorum consisting of, in this case, 2. In your actual packet, you have in there the Texas Open Meetings Act and legal opinion saying that a quorum of 2, which is what is happening right now. We have 2 of the 3 committee members were able to hold the meeting, and that's what we're including, inserting in here in this particular section.
Okay.
So we're good with this one?
Good.
This is a little bit more, this is just a cleanup at video, and the board chair requested for it to come over here to the committee. And the reason being is that previous practice has been that the chair of each one of the committees decides how the committee is going to do. For example, this is the first time we meet the Policy and Regulatory Committee. It's up to the chair to decide, do we want the meeting to be, right now it's being recorded, but do we want it to post it on there or not? This is actually cleanup, and one of the recommendations is that all of them be retained and posted on the website. So it's up to, instead of leaving it up to the chair, all of them be consistent and open for conversation. So are you all in agreement with this change?
So we have a choice here?
Yes.
Yeah, the first, as is in the first bullet, or the alternate recommendation, correct?
Right. The alternate recommendation is that each committee chair shall have their option to post the audio or video recording of the committee meetings.
That option is allowed by
Yes, it is.
the open meeting?
But our recommendation this time is the first one that
If it's,
to treat everybody
by the
consistently.
Open Meetings Act, my inclination is to give the chair the flexibility to do so, even though I'd struggle to see a situation where that would come to fruition, but I would prefer that. I'm always in favor of flexibility for necessarily posting things, and as long as you state that's within the Texas Open Meetings Act rules, and limitations, then I would prefer that one. Sandra?
B?
Yeah, the second one. As long as we make sure that the committee chairs, please remind the chairs that they need to exercise that option, and that the default, I think, maybe that the default option, unless the committee says no, or the chair says no, not to post, that the default option would be to post, just allowing them, he or she, flexibility to do so, but not to, oh, you didn't say so, so we didn't post it, because I'm gonna forget.
Yeah, so this is after the meeting. So in other words, the meeting happens and then all of a sudden we decide, okay,
Yeah.
we keep the records.
Yeah, you can remind the chair, unless something contentious or whatever happens that we want to be able to, for whatever reason, just give them the flexibility, then go ahead and post that, maybe change the wording to that effect, unless otherwise directed by the committee chair. That effect.
Mhm. So what, if you'd like, we can open up to the full board for conversation and see
Yeah.
if the majority.
Do that. 'Cause
one way or
this
the other.
affects- Yeah, this is a fundamental issue related to sharing of information and making sure that, and get another round of making sure that everybody's on board with both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law behind the Texas Open Meetings Act.
Okay. Will do. Then we'll provide that and there'll be flexibility for everybody to deliberate at the next board meeting. We'll provide the options. And I think this was the last issue we had and changes on here.
Right.
Oh, this is a new added language that was recommended by Mr. Folk. And so this is just, if there's any provision, section, part, subsection, section, clause, phrase, paragraph, and the use of the rules declared invalid or unconstitutional, the same should not affect any other provision or provided thereof, and all other provisions shall be invalid and affected by any other invalid portion of any. So this is just the legal portion in there. I didn't see a portion for debate. So, okay. And that
Anything else?
moves on.
Any other comments or questions?
No,
Sandra?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, we're doing good on time, so we're moving on to item number 5. And item number 5, we have Mr. Cortinas, and he's going to be talking about electric service policies.
Let me look at that presentation. So good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Langley.
Good afternoon.
Cesar Cortinas, Director of Transmission Electric T&D. Let me get this document on here. So I will be presenting to you the BPUB electrical water wastewater service policies with the emphasis on the electrical policies only. In your package, you should have 3 different policies. The first one is basically the red lines of the electrical policies. The second one is the clean version of the proposed new electrical policies. And the last one is what is left of the water wastewater with all the electrical language removed. So that's there. A quick note on that last one, Appendix P, Q, and R should not be there. Because just make a note that the last 2 are not on the current BPUB policy posted on the website. So those 3 at the end need to be removed because those are not being approved by the board. It's just that if we had it on the Word document, it got misplaced there.
Okay.
Just a quick note. So this slide generally talks about, what the BPU electrical policies purposes, which is, provide a written service rule that ensures customers may receive uniform, efficient, and adequate BPU electrical service. Also, generally, all customers who have applied for or have electrical services from are subjected to these policies. And also the last LBPU electric water wastewater service policy approved by the board was back in August of 2009. So this last bullet basically mentions that we are separating the electrical electric service policies from this general policy. And, this is basically because we want to have a more efficient policy documentation and revisions. I don't want to wait for the water to make changes when I need to make changes right away, or vice versa. No, they don't need to wait for me to make changes, or I don't need to get with them in order to make changes to my policy. So basically, electrical will be responsible for their policies, water will be responsible for their own policies. This next slide is basically, let's skip one. So what changed? Throughout the document, you'll see changes that reflect the need of business practices. I have a couple examples there. In the past, I guess we provided the electrical meter enclosures. We're no longer doing that for several years, so we changed the language. Specifications of certain customer-related responsibilities depending on the type of classification of service. This example here is that we asked them to provide the conduit of 5 feet from the transformer, which is not the case. We just want it right in front of it, which is a feet from the transformer base. We did include a new section, which is called reliability improvement. BPU may subsidize all or portion of the cost of customer requested reliability projects for improvements. But the key is that we need to justify by doing a reliability study both for the need. So that's one of the new changes on the policy. And some of these projects that may apply to this policy will be like an overhead to underground conversion, meter services replacements or modifications, maybe a new feeder, replacing director, primary cable, and other installations as needed. We also updated the street light LED rates, basically making reference to the CUB ordinance. We do have this one in particular, the new subdivision street light installation costs. For the past, I've been here like 17 years, we have been charging $725 to the developers per street light, when actual the cost for us is $2,407 per pole installation. So we changing that recommendation here. Additional, we added a new fee also for overhead installations, which is $1,532 per installation. We don't typically have overhead because most of the subdivision new developments are underground installations. So we added this one just in case we got an overhead subdivision. We also updated the appendices with the standards and general housekeeping throughout the document,
Item number, bullet number 4, new subdivision street light installation cost. What page does that change on?
The page.
That would be helpful in the future.
Yeah, I might have it here in my notes. On the new service policies, it's page 68 of 75.
68, 75.
68 of 70 on the new service policy.
Was this provided to us? Because I see a Mac.
Yes.
That should be the second
set.
the second set.
There you go. Got it.
You found, you got it?
Just wanted to see that real quick. There's lots of different page numbers. I think we can,
I don't think it's,
Our apologies on that. We tried to make it a little bit, trying to provide.
there you go.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because that was hard to track down, because this was a beast of a document.
I understand that. I had to, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I
for that.
understand.
That
I
was
was
kind of,
complaining about the size of the document. What I'm suggesting is that we modify the method in which we highlight what changes are specifically being made. And so it's a little easier for us to skim to those relevant sections. Because I could not find that in here very quickly. It took me quite a while. Secondly, for some reason, this is probably just a printer issue, but
Yeah.
the grayed out comments on this section, the comments were grayed out and it was hard to read the changes in the comments.
yeah, that's,
Kind of, they didn't come out very well.
yeah,
On toner or something.
I'm maybe, I'm not sure. So this is.
No, I'm
page
getting older, but I'm not that.
68 of 75, that's where we have the,
Okay, so this change in cost issue, is that a policy issue, an operational issue, or?
I think it's more.
Some of them are, the ones that are above are ordinance issues, so the ones that are below are PAB. So this is our costs or installation. So we have certain things are require ordinance approval, which is the top portion.
Mhm.
And the bond is the new streetlight installation cost. And I'm going to refer to, at this time, to our CFO, but we were talking earlier today about a cost of service to be done probably, before the end of the year to start. And so that way we can get, what is our real cost? As costs have been going up, this is something that, and this,
But that's my direct question. My direct question is, was that how was that cost arrived at? And is that part of this process? And are we approving that with this? Or are we approving the fact that this document has been changed?
Yeah, it will be
Those are two
included.
very fundamentally different things.
Actually, on our current policy that is posted on the website, we don't have this appendix. So
Yeah.
right now, we're just charging based on history, $725 per lamp per street
So it
light.
sounds like a bigger issue than just changing the document.
right. So one of the things we'll bring to the board, anything that has to do a change in policy, we will address it. This is just to get initial feedback. We expect probably this policy to come back a couple of times
Yeah,
to this board.
That
This is not
definitely
something
comes for discussion, yeah.
Right, because this is the original, we want to open up that dialogue so everybody understands all of the various different changes that we have in here.
Okay.
For the monthly street charges that we have, this is something that is approved by ordinance that was done in 2020, but we have posted on the website because our policy book hasn't been updated. It's still, some time back. This
Okay, so
policy
second-
that was in 2000, was last revised,
Got it.
so we're way over 20 billion on getting,
So yeah, this is basically the last slide on my presentation was basically, you guys want to take it home, review it and give us feedback, or you want to give us a recommendation to
I
present.
don't
to
want
the
to
board.
view it anymore, I'll tell you that. Makes for a very interesting bedtime reading. Hey, I'm a
Yeah.
scientist and.
This morning, we got some feedback also from the executive team. Yeah, we got some feedback from the executive team on the new water wastewater, what is left off.
Yeah.
To maybe make reference to the exact page on the new policy, because if you look at the one that it's gonna be left off for the water wastewater, we put like intentionally left blank
Mhm.
because we removed all the electrical. So we didn't want to mess with the page numbering, so we leave a lot of white spaces. So the recommendation was like, okay, go ahead and make reference of what you remove. These sections is now on the new policy, which is also a new format. And just,
I'm not sure I follow.
Let me explain. So
Yeah.
this was one of the audit findings, that this policy has not been changed to the new format. And so in order to address the new format and having separate policies for the various different general rules, which covers customer service for pretty much, and then you have the water and then the wastewater, and then you have general, but that apply to both. So the intent right now is the electrical department is ready to move with the recommended changes, and they've already proposed and start the dialogue. So we are removing, and that's why we have this section has intentionally been removed, was in order for us to address the electric service policies into, and then what we're gonna do is we're, instead of saying it was removed, it was gonna say refer to new policy ELE
Okay.
1004, and so now we have a new policy to be reduced on there until the water and wastewater department is ready for them to come forth with their changes. Yes.
eventually,
I follow.
and the format will need to change then on their end. And similarly, there's a couple of appendices and stuff that apply to both.
Yeah.
We're talking also about those appendices.
I've handled that.
Yeah, how we handle that, as for our
document side.
policy manager, she's recommending not to separate them. Just keep them, no, wait. Keep them on each policy, so that way I'm responsible for
That's
mine
all for you all, yeah.
and they're responsible for
You
theirs.
guys come up with what you think is best, let us see it. I don't want to get into the weeds that far. Let's,
Yeah, at the end, we just bring a document, you let us know if you approve it.
I just want to make sure I understood that my biggest concern with all this is that the cost issue is derived, and that how we, understanding that issue, make sure it was, that the whole board can see that process and make sure that we justify that increase. I understand the need for the change, just want to make sure that that's a substantive change increase that's substantially different from simply modifying a
Yeah,
document.
what we did, we just create a work order for the actual costs, and that's the number.
Yeah.
We can provide that.
Well, yeah, you could say that. We can't say that.
So we'll provide the breakdown.
Get it erased.
Of course.
We can provide the breakdown of how long it occurs, or the people, the hours, and the
Yeah,
typical
look.
things, and what it installs. We have that, and then the average, and we can come back before the board. One of the biggest ones, I'm going to go back to one of the items that Cesar talked about is the reliability section. That is a completely new section that was not in there. And that addresses the issue that we've been having in a certain part of town. So what that means is if you're the top 10.
Sorry, you said reliability?
Reliability.
Yeah.
The Katie, Sadie, and Mayfield, all the various different metrics that we use on the electrical side of the business to do that. And the reason we're adding this section here is we know what our 10 worst performing circuits are, and we know what the culprits are: vegetation, animal contact, and sometimes there's other, areas that are very hard to get to because we cannot do that. So this would address the reliability issues to improve our outage times and reduce the number of times that we have. There's some circuits out there that may have had excessive amount of time that they break or they cause other issues. And so this reliability improvement is if we have data that says you are one of the top 10 performing circuits, then we're going to go in there and replace that circuitry and update it.
You mean the bottom 10 performing circuit? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right. So,
The top 10 offenders, right?
The top 10 offenders of where, and not only that, that's also going to help relieve our crews to do other maintenance on the system instead of just addressing the same circuit that goes out time after time.
Okay. If I'm still here in a few months, I'd really like to see that data.
So we can send it to you tomorrow.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Yeah, but if I'm still here, yeah, let's knock on wood on that one.
we have sent that to Mr.
Dr. Holman has requested that data before and actually
It
sent.
just beats me to requesting data, and you know that if I'm requesting data, I mean it. Dr. Holman wants everything. Oh, is that on the record?
So that is the end of my presentation. I know we have to come back maybe another month from now.
Anything else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're right on schedule, right on time, and we have our last item on here. And we have some people that are on for this item online, and then also have Mr. Betty Garcia to do now the presentation.
I know Buddy won't go over 10 minutes, right?
So if you recall, this is a policy meeting and also a regulatory meeting. So this is the part of the regulatory body of and we're coming, so I'll let him talk about the state legislative and regulatory activities.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee online as well. I know Kurt Seidlitz with Focus Advocacy, I believe he's on the phone, as well as Lindley Hurd. And I'm Buddy Garcia on behalf of the Garcia Group. We're your legislative government consultants in Austin. As you may be aware, and I don't, should I chime in? Kurt, can you hear me? He's not on? Lindley's on.
Hi, buddy. I can hear you. I believe Kurt's on too.
Thank you. Thank you. I just we'll improvise as we go. We know we have 20 minutes, but wanted to make sure that you have some of the highlights as it relates to Brownsville Public Utilities Board. This last legislative session, the 88th legislative session, came to a close on Monday, and the governor called a special session immediately that same day, albeit for property taxes and border security issues that don't necessarily affect you all now. The session began with following last session's Winter Storm Uri legislation that would address Winter Storm Uri. This session, a priority of the legislature was dispatchable generation, that being the baseload power versus renewables. And a priority was to create a reliability standard, new ERCOT market design, and a performance credit mechanism that the Public Utility Commission developed since over the interim from last session. And so there were quite a few bills that dealt with these topics. Ultimately, the Sunset Bill 1500 contained a lot of provisions of these bills, House Bill 1500. Another key bill that will affect Brownsville Public Utilities Board was for water, Senate Bill 28 and the Senate Joint Resolution 75, which create a new water fund that will be up for an election, the SJR part for a statewide election in November. But if that passes, and it's widely anticipated it will, it'll create a couple of $2 billion more for water projects, including desalination. I want to hit on a few topics if I could to follow through as I mentioned, there was quite a few bills that passed and failed. Environmental legislation that affects this body, particularly that dealt with the Public Utility Commission. They were sunsetted and approved. ERCOT, Texas Environmental Quality, Commission on Environmental Quality, their sunset bill passed as well. And the Texas Water Development Board sunset bill, which passed. Texas Water Development Board in particular will be in charge of the rules around the new Senate Bill 28. As I mentioned, the key players for some of the electricity, it involves dispatchable power. The legislature, particularly leadership, is very keen on creating new opportunities for generation of dispatchable power, notwithstanding any of the issues that might be accompanying that, including environmental issues. There's such a push by the federal government to subsidize renewables, as you know, from around the area. I think that market intervention has leadership concerned that the dispatchable power is not as attractive for new generations. So they have several bills that would create opportunities for loans or for generation to develop. As you might imagine, because they were new and there was quite a bit of controversy over the details of a capacity market versus the current market system that we have right now. And particularly renewable energy was in the focus of trying to be removed. There's a tax incentive bill as well that allows the tax abatements that they removed renewable energy from. So as we go focus, I'll mention Senator Perry. Chairman Perry was the key author of Senate Bill 28, the water bill, and Representative Tracy King, the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee. Our local delegation, Senator LaMantia and Representative Gomez were extremely instrumental in helping with that. Representative Gomez serves on the House Natural Resources Committee. Senate Bill 2627 was the bill that was introduced late in the session, but creates a loan opportunity funding mechanism for generators to come into Texas with a number of conditions for them to receive the loan. But timeliness is very important to the legislature in trying to move forward and finding ways to bring electric generation in a very competitive market right now, and it's very difficult to make money considering that the renewables are so attractive and obviously don't have any environmental emissions. The constitutional amendment, SJR 93, that allows for the creation of the new energy fund was authorized. House Bill 1500 is the sunset bill that for the Public Utility Commission, which at the end, because of the open-endedness of the bill, and it's not limited to one topic, it became a Christmas tree, if you will, for a number of other bills that dealt with electricity. One of those that would have put some new regulatory parameters on renewable energy was not included there at the end, was taken out. And then House Bill 5 is the incentives program, the tax abatement program that was reinstated after the legislature got rid of Chapter 313. They now recreated this new tax abatement program, albeit does not include renewable energy. These are a number of bills that failed, as I've mentioned to the PUB staff and Marilyn, your CEO. We have had a session that was focused, and I imagine this is going to continue. Municipalities are in the sights of legislative leadership in Texas. There's been a number of reasons why that is, partially due to cities like Austin and some of their management techniques, but also some larger cities that are primarily Democrat, and the legislative leadership is very Republican. And so the themes continue to develop over limiting municipal spending and limiting what municipal, and in your case, just like the other 72 municipally owned utilities in the state, the other 71, you all are owned by a city, and this is part of why the bond ratings are so high in cities that have MOUs. You own all the equipment, you own all the pipes in the ground. This is your utility. The city owns it, the citizens own it. And there's been an increasing amount of legislation that addresses or tries to tinker with, if you will, the ability for municipalities to run their utilities. One of the major bills that would have prevented, for example, general fund transfers that died. Some of the bills that came about because of the winter storm this last winter in Austin, where there was an ice storm and so many trees died. There was a bill that would have dealt with municipal vegetation growth that died. 624 was the one I mentioned that would have limited renewable energy, would have had actual permitting guidelines, setbacks, things of that nature. And the reason why I mention that is because your portfolio of choices that you choose when you buy electricity or choose to enter into agreements for renewables or what have you are affected by these actions by the legislature. If you will, how you can address your rates. That was another issue that was, they attempted a bill that did not pass that would have allowed PUC to for residents to appeal their rates to PUC over you all deciding those rates. So all those bills failed, but the management in general of municipally owned utilities, part of what we spent quite a bit of time on is educating legislators. 150 House members, 31 senators, as you might imagine, who have serve in the legislature as a part-time job, just like y'all, and trying to educate them in short time and their staffs on the differences between investor-owned utilities, municipally owned utilities, how it is affected by areas that have customer choice, for example, which is not a panacea. And just on a side note, PUB offers some of the most competitive rates in the state. I think the second most competitive. So in spite of the fact that people don't want their rates to go up, the source of that is not because of municipally owned utilities. I just thought I'd share some of those bills, and we can get into more detail if you'd like to on many of these. On the water side, there was let me go back also one other bill that did not pass, House Bill 2815. That was the bill we tried to amend to allow past members to serve. I have a copy of that bill and the side-by-side, which was primarily a bill that dealt with elections of members to water conservation boards. And although we had a good audience with the House member who carried Representative Jatan and Senator Creighton, ultimately they did not include our language. The water legislation, as I mentioned, this was a rather large piece of probably because of the drought conditions of the past couple of years. The state took a very serious look at water, and albeit maybe the $2 billion are going to be put aside or so for this program, Senate Bill 28, and if the constitutional amendment is passed by the vote, it does include desalination projects. It does include trying to address new water projects, new water leaks, a number of things that Water Development Board will have to develop the rules on. I've met with 2 of the 3 Water Development Board members, very close to all of those folks. And as they continue to develop these rules, we'll be in consultation with them to make sure that those rules do allow for Brownsville Public Utility Board to participate. One amendment the House added to that Senate Bill 28 was to include EDAP, Economically Distressed Areas Program priority, and that was removed in the conference committee. But that does not preclude those topics from being included in the funding as Water Development Board creates the rules for spending that. And as I mentioned, the statewide vote is required. That'll be in November. But if that passes,
Buddy, pardon the interrupt. Can you say that again about EDAP? It was removed from the
Yes,
language, but it doesn't prohibit the
the
Water
House,
Development Board from setting a rule on that?
the House included provisions for EDAP money to be prioritized in that fund, the new water fund.
Okay.
And it's not illegal for that money to be used for EDAP, but they took that specific language out about EDAP out of the bill. But it doesn't preclude North American Development Bank being a collaboration. It doesn't preclude private capital. There's a number of broad ways that the Water Development Board will consider. But the gist of it is about $2 billion more will be spent. Now, when you consider there's probably a $38 billion need for water resources across the state, may seem like a drop in the bucket. But it is a beginning of sorts toward I think one of the few issues that is bipartisan. where the Republicans and the Democrats agree that something that a function of the state government that needs to be addressed. And so we look forward to as the rulemaking and implementation of Senate Bill 28 moves forward, that we work with the Water Development Board so that they will be able to include us as their agency, as our projects are identified. Some other things that we work on besides the water funding project, we work with the TCEQ. We work with as you may be aware, there's a sludge permit at the Port of Brownsville. We're working on transferring. As you're aware, Mr. Chairman, the Restore Act will be partial. Again, we've worked on this to get Brownsville included in the initial round, but there'll be other rounds of Restore Act funding that we need to apply for. And Brownsville City, I believe, in a very good position with TCEQ as far as being able to continue to receive money from Treasury on that. As the next steps, if you will, during the interim, it's implementation of these bills, both the performance credit mechanism for the electricity and the limitations that was the new created mechanism for scarcity price, to try to avoid scarcity pricing in electricity. The Public Utility Commission and the legislature deemed appropriate certain limits on a performance credit mechanism to generators who come in and especially can provide electricity when the times are scarce, when it's the hottest or the coldest. It provides incentives for them when they can provide certainty that they're going to have electricity available. And those, again, the details of which were very, very contentious. The idea of incentivizing dispatchable generation is very important to the legislative leadership, as well as a new ERCOT market design that to make sure that it has guidelines, a cap. $1 billion was included. Some people think that we're opposed to that. They say, I'm not going to come in and build generation with a cap on it. Other people didn't like the guardrails. So it was a back and forth between, as you might imagine, a variety of special interests that have an interest in trying to provide electricity on the grid. But at the end of the day, those topics will continue to be developed over the summer as the Public Utility Commission, who's tasked primarily with control and management of those new ideas, continues to develop. That'll be all summer long, I anticipate. And then as far as the Public Utilities Boards, Brownsville Public Utilities Board position on those, as we can convey in real time to legislative leadership or what have you, there was a bill that would have prevented taxpayer-funded lobbying. That bill did not pass, but that primarily is the ability for y'all to have an input, or the city, to legislate towards, especially those that are running committees that affect you all. Investor-owned utilities have quite a bit arsenal, as you might imagine, or generators have an arsenal of people. We try to support and participate where it applies to the Brownsville Public Utilities Board's interests in providing rate controls, a substantial understanding of how it works. As I mentioned, how the bond ratings and other things are assessed, but particularly as you develop your part of regulatory policies, how we can educate the leadership and the boards on how it affects Brownsville is what we spend quite a bit of time on. Lindley, I don't know if you want to add on into anything while I just primarily jumped into this, but I wanted to make sure that Kurt and Lindley had a chance to chime in as well.
No, buddy, I think you did a great job. If we have time, I think it'd be great if we could have a bit of discussion and answer any questions if y'all have any.
Yeah, thank you. Buddy, are you ready for questions?
I think so, yeah. I'm just trying to rush.
Yeah, is there anybody else online that has comments? Because I know it's kind of difficult to jump in when you're miles away. Please feel free to do so, even when we're asking questions, okay? All right, first off, for the record, buddy, dispatchable power, my understanding is power that is quickly turn on and off and is available on demand?
Yes, and
for folks that are maybe listening to this later, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when we say dispatchable, is that a gas turbine type thing situation, or is it a movable gas turbine, or what?
primarily the dispatchable power that legislative leadership seeks is gas-powered electricity.
Yeah.
It could be nuclear. It could even be battery, if batteries, because it turns on and off. And I
Yeah.
think as the advent of battery technology improves, you'll see more renewable energy being
Do
stored
they
in batteries.
include nuclear? As a nuclear power officer, I can tell you that we just don't turn it on and off that thing, but I think I understand. That's why I asked the question related to. Because the discussion, as I'm sure you well know, and I'm not sure everybody knows, is this becomes an alternative versus traditional energy source issue. And I think it's maybe a wolf in sheep's clothing type of situation where when you say dispatchable power, it really means traditional energy sources. Is that?
It is everything but renewable, if you
Everything
could.
but renewable.
That, you know, when the sun is shining,
Yeah,
you have solar power availability. And when the wind is blowing, you have the wind turbine availability.
Got it.
But when it isn't, the legislature was really keen on trying to separate those two because there is so much of that is subsidized. It really creates a market intervention, if you will, from the federal government who subsidize quite a bit of the renewable. I think renewables not going away. I think that's going to continue to expand. But Texas primarily was looking for, in those times of scarcity when it's so super hot and there's no sun or no wind, they want that backup power, and the generators just aren't coming into the state to build power plants of that nature unless they can make some money off the deal. There were several types of ideas floated around. One would have been that you create a capacity market where you just pay someone to have a power plant going, ready to go when we need it, and that one didn't go forward, that bill. But there are other, the PCM, the Performance Credit Mechanism, and the loan program, these were developed as trying to effectively bring more in very real time, quick time, dispatchable power or traditional power, if you will, to the market in Texas. And that's
PCM, sorry, buddy, but does PCM, that performance credit mechanism, does that apply to new generation only?
It would be primarily to generators, but the current energy only market, it would be available to those people that are on the market now that could provide proof that they're going to be able to provide power in those scarcity times, as well as new generation.
Okay.
The new generation is mostly affected by the new loan program.
So that would include potentially, theoretically, gas turbines that are, we're talking about, your example is when it was really hot, but the other example just a couple of years ago when it was really cold and wellheads were frozen.
Yes, and Senate Bill 2627 is a loan program, a funding mechanism that would be available to generators who prospectively that want to construct modern dispatchable electric generating facilities. That Senate Bill 2627 is exclusively for them, new ones to come in with conditions for that, receiving that loan. But yes, to your point, it's mostly traditional. And Kurt, did I hear you on the line?
Yeah, if it's okay, buddy, I was just going to expand on the chairman's question on dispatchable. The actual language in the bill is considered to be dispatchable because the facility's output can be controlled primarily by forces under human control. So when Buddy describes an on and off switch, even though nuclear, as we know, takes a few days to get up and running, but what they're really looking for are those quick start turbine gas powered along the lines of Wärtsilä makes them, GE makes a turbine, but they're looking for 5-minute start generation that can come on at the time of day if the sun's not shining and producing energy, or if the wind's not blowing and not producing wind renewable energy. That's what they're really keyed on.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. And that's what I figured. I figured the devil was in the details there. And I think that's going to come to an issue. Obviously, my question is, and Marilyn backed me up here, and it's my concern here is with our share of that dispatchable power in the form of the Silas Ray plant. And the fact that we are geographically positioned in a place that the next time a winter freeze rolls around for 90% of Texas, we're likely going to be in that 10% that is less affected. And those power plants, that power plant, while small in nature, may benefit from some sort of performance credit mechanism that, because it's able to perform. So along the same reasons why SpaceX came here to launch rockets, because we're south, we're warmer, and that could be used to our advantage. And I want to make sure that we leverage every possible advantage from that geographic location, particularly during the winter months when the next freeze comes around.
Yeah, and PUB, and here's another example that separates y'all from some of the other utilities, including, I believe San Antonio. For example, you have backup generators. When this became a part of Senate Bill 3 last session, after the session, that was a big component for some. That was a very big expense that they couldn't address straight across the board, and y'all already kind of do because of, I assume, because of your the proximity to the coast and hurricanes and things. But some of MOUs are set up different than others, and obviously the choices y'all make for electricity generation, or that you choose to buy where you purchase power, they're different. Then all of them, everyone is different. It's almost like you have a different bet at a craps table in Vegas, right? Everybody has a different, and as the legislature effectively changes these things, your rates will be affected. The choices you make going forward will be affected. I recognize that the legislature is not real keen on renewables, but they're not going away, and they're not polluting, right? So those are going to be a continued battle, I think, because our state really our leadership wants more dispatchable power generation.
So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add that, at the start of the session, one of the things says, like, what are the goals and objectives? That's like, well, if there's any type of legislature says, one of the things that both Focus Advocacy and the Garcia Group were said, no unfunded mandates. What did that mean? If there's any legislation that is out there that's going to affect our bottom line and our rates, then please let us know. So there were several bills that both of them, both teams sent over for our review. We were very active in providing comments, and they were actively there with the legislatures and worked very closely. So it's really important for us to have people, boots on the ground, that can get to there as quickly as possible. So when something is being proposed, explain, hey, this means X amount of dollars to us, which means that the only way we're going to be able to recover is by us having to increase rates. And so we're very, very sensitive to not to increase rates. And so the intent here is they did a great job in some of those bills that didn't pass, because those were some mandates that would have prevented anything that had eroding local control, meaning we want to keep local control, and anything that said that it was taking away from the ability for us to pave the future for this community was something that they were, tasked with opposing, and ensure that they weren't, getting ourselves. We want to be able to say, hey, we want to be part of this or not a part of this, and don't dictate to us something we can and cannot do. And that was something that they were very effective in some of those bills. And it really, the other 72 municipalities out there also were the same. Everybody has a different makeup. Everybody has a different guidelines, a different community. And I think that we're the ones that know best what works for our community. And we know that we have that rate sensitivity that we have because of our, the poverty rate that we have in our community.
I appreciate that. Actually, and in fact, I skimmed over page 7 here, which effectively deals with some of those topics. One bill that did pass that's going to affect the city of Brownsville and possibly y'all is House Bill 2127. Preemption bill. The state is very, very, very interested in preempting certain local municipal ordinances. Some that may seem like a really good idea, where, let's say, you're dealing with emissions or greenhouse gases. EPA delegates that to the state, and certain municipalities have tried to take on more of that. And I think the state doesn't want that. They want it to be a one size fits all for the state. The state laws would preempt that. Where it becomes a problem is where there's other issues that ordinances that cities have that may be dealing with, let's say, benefits for part-time employees, mandated sick leave. Those would be affected by preemption, right, by the state saying, no, we don't want you. And again, some of these themes have to do with the municipalities that are large and maybe don't vote with the state leadership to the right, and maybe they're farther left. And so these bills that on page 7 that pass, some of those deal with another one is extraterritorial jurisdiction, or giving people the ability to disannex or vote to disannex from their areas. As you can see, Senate Bill 369 did not pass, but these received quite a bit of attention from leadership. And I imagine these themes will continue as the leadership has been very interested in trying to limit what certain municipalities can do So that's a very good point, that a lot of these bills affect the municipal's ability to raise money, including the property tax issue. As you keep capping property taxes, those become operational funds for cities. Somebody's going to be reduced in amount of money, and it's usually the municipalities. So those issues, those themes will continue if the legislature remains on its current trajectory. They seem to really have it out for municipal authority. Am I missing anything, Kurt?
No, I would just add on that House Bill 2127, I think it's important to note that they're really changing the structure of general law, cities, and home law, home rule charters. We were able to pass ordinances before, but now you almost have to go to the legislature to get express authority to pass an ordinance in a field that the state thinks that they have dominance and are preempting you from. So we used to just pass the ordinances, and then if someone didn't like it, they could take it up with a lawsuit, or they can file a bill at the State House. But now they've turned it to where we have to go ask for express authority to pass certain type of ordinances. And it's going to be determined in a huge court fight. And I think that's probably going to start within 90 days of this bill.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, that there's so many bills targeting municipal control. I anticipate they'll be in court lawsuits.
So it was excellent discussion, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And those of you online. Any questions? Anything else?
I'd just like to add, as needed, we're more than happy to continue to expand on these conversations. If you need more information, or if you more focus on some certain aspects, we'd be happy to, officially or unofficially, because this is literally what we do. We don't build houses. We don't clean teeth. This is what we spend our time doing, and it's a privilege to serve the city of Brownsville. But I wanted to emphasize candidly how hard we work toward trying to educate. These legislators, they come in for 150 days during the session, and now special session. They are not experts in municipal government. Sometimes they're former members, sometimes not, but they're ranchers, doctors, lawyers, and they have very willing staff. They sit on committees that deal with, it's almost like taking a college course every week for them. And it has to be done quickly. It's very, very comprehensive, but the information is so relevant to convey to them, to have access to them, so that the decisions are made on real facts. So as we can be available to you, as these issues, I mentioned this because grid reliability remains a very big concern as these changes come forward. Water will remain a very large concern, and as that funding becomes available, would love to make sure that you all have access to, whether it be for the desal plant or any other plans you have to expand. Being able to regionalize, especially in water, is key. And then, of course, in y'all's case, if you can do anything to get off of the Rio Grande reliability because of the treaty, and relying on the U.S. and Mexico to work together. You all, Brownsville Public Utilities Board is highly regarded in the legislature as an example of what to look forward to in the future. So you should know that your efforts, especially with the Southmost Regional Water Authority, those are things that people want to emulate. So it's a pleasure to work with y'all and at your service.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Marilyn, how are we going to get this information to the broader board? Is he going to present again, or?
Up to the committee on how more, expand, or reduce. We are going to have 2 agenda items where we are going to be discussing the contract at the next board meeting. And at that point, we can discuss it then, or we can add a separate information.
The chair and say, I'll recommend that. I don't want to put you on the spot again, buddy, but I think this is so relevant that we can either summarize it for him. I don't want to be the person that does that summary because I'm a scientist engineer. I'm not a policy or a public affairs expert.
Feel free to put me on the spot. I'd be happy to return.
Yeah, we may ask you, depending on the decision, if you'd be willing to at least online or again come down and present to large board, specifically relevant to some of the larger bills that passed and failed that are going to be directly impacting our future. I think
Okay.
that's, it's something that now, I'm 4 years into this. I was completely ignorant of this kind of stuff, stepping into this 4 years ago, and our new board members that will be either replacing us or adding to, I think they need to see this earlier on in the process.
Okay.
Now that we have some hopefully smooth waters moving forward, and pandemic and other stuff, maybe all that stuff is behind us. We can start focusing on some of these big picture items related to the efficiency of our power and water supply and wastewater treatment to our customers. So thanks again.
And if I could offer too as well, we could be a liaison to Water Development Board. I've already met with the board. They have agreed that they would be happy to meet with us, with
Okay.
y'all as needed as they move forward with rules, as well as if we need to bring in ERCOT or the Public Utility Commission, we have access to all of those members as well. Kathleen Jackson, for example, she was just appointed to the board. It's now 5-member board at the PUC. Commissioner Glotfelty, for example, called and wanted Brownsville PUB to be included in the Coastal Resiliency Board planning. And Maryland has worked well on that and helping them. But the point is that we have the ear of these members that are running these agencies and that actually are going to be implementing these bills. It might be worthy of their time as well to come down. So with enough planning, we can arrange all that.
Great.
At your
Thank you.
service. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
They're happy to.
Well, you need to go, folks. Anybody else? Sorry, we went a little over there. Anything else, Marilyn?
Nope, that's it.
Discussion and request for future agenda items.
We'll include this legislative update in a summarized version under general manager's report and maybe 1 or 2 slides and various different things that happen.
Yep.
And if it's okay on the phone and in person, we'll work with the chair on that.
Okay. Anything else?
We're good.
All right. Then, in the absence of anything else, thank you, everybody, for taking this time out of your busy schedule. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like